All right, welcome to the continuing sessions of today's CM4AF Day 2021. I have with me, and by the way, thank you so much for our audience for their interactions and great participation, asking our presenters and panelists various questions. So thank you for keeping that level of interaction. In the second half of today, we'll be running through three various sessions, exciting sessions, I must say, with Rudy, Tatiana, and Frederick later on, and then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session by the end with Frederick and Brian. In the meantime, this session is quite interesting one, which will be talking about how to improve the Kubernetes experience with Payara Cloud. I have with me Rudy DeBusscher. Rudy, just an introduction about Rudy. Rudy loves to create web applications with the Jakarta platform and Eclipse microprofile implementations, and is currently working for Payara Services as a project manager. He helps customers, prospects, writers, writes technical content, is also part of some microfile implementations and advocates the Payara products in various ways. He's an active IT industry professional with more than 20 years of experience in creating many applications for clients. He's also a big fan of open source and helped in various open source projects like Delta Spike, Prime Faces, Apache, MyFaces, etc. He's also passionate about web application security using OAuth 2, OpenLAN Connect, and JWT. He maintains the Octopus open source project and is a member of the Jakarta EE security API platform. And today's session with Rudy, it's about how you can improve the Kubernetes experience with Payara Cloud. And Kubernetes can manage the containers that run your applications more easily than if you need to handle them individually. It's a PAAS solution that takes away the burden to keep or to deep dive into a framework that can handle many tasks of you. We will also demonstrate the simple steps to bring your Jakarta EE applications to the cloud with Payara Cloud with no Kubernetes knowledge needed at all. So, Rudy, the mic is yours.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. And you basically already said what I wanted to say on my first slide is that how we have developed Payara Cloud to make the Kubernetes experience a bit easier because we all know that Kubernetes is great. You can do a lot of great things with it, but it requires some investment, some time from the people from your company to learn it, to maintain it, and sometimes it does not pay off. That's our opinion about it, and so that's why we have created Payara Cloud. So let's have a look how that can help you bringing your Jakarta EE application to the cloud. So quick look at the agenda, a bit more in detail. So what are your deployment options? Because cloud is not the only option, and platform as a service is not the only option. So quickly going over them, a few pro and contra of each of them. I will do a quick demo of Payara Cloud itself so that you can see what I'm talking about, how we think that deploying to the cloud should be. The easy few steps, a few clicks on a website and your application is up and running. We go a bit deeper into the components of Payara Cloud, mainly so that you see what complexity we are taking away from you, and that basically what most companies do is creating their own platform as a service. Just we generalized it so that everyone can use it on our systems. And then in the last few minutes, we can have a short discussion about Kubernetes, using it directly, or some tools like Payara Clouds, but there are also other frameworks and vendors working on similar solutions than what we have done with Payara Cloud. So your application is ready to deploy. So what now? Well, first of all, I hope that you did think about that question up front at the beginning of the project. But you have various options on deploying your application, of course. You have the classic on-premise deployment, where you buy your server, you install it physically within your data center, you integrate it within your network, your firewall, routing, etc. And you're also responsible then, of course, for maintaining it, installing the runtime, configuring, deploying the application, etc. That's an option that is still valid. We did it, and a lot of companies did it for the last 20 or even more years. But it's still a valid option today, because sometimes you need full control of what you're doing, where data is located, for instance, due to legal or GDPR reasons. Then it's not an option for some companies to switch to a cloud provider, for example. But most of the time, of course, people do not buy service anymore, because you're restricted in the sense that you're not, you cannot scale up down easily and down or down, and then, because okay, you can scale down if you have a server in your data center, but then that server is doing nothing, so that's not a good thing. So the infrastructure as a service solution from a certain cloud provider then is, of course, an option, because there you only need to specify the CPU and the memory requirements that you, of the server, of the resource that you need. You can launch a few command line tools. You can use it on a website, click on a button, and a few minutes later you have there a server. We still call it server, but it is a, most of the time, a shared instance on a VM. Sometimes you have or you can use a dedicated resource from the cloud provider if you want an entire physical resource from that cloud provider for your own purposes. But not much difference, of course, that infrastructure as a service, not much difference with the on-premise solution. You still can, or you still need to access the server via remote shell, for instance. You need to install the runtime, you need to configure and deploy your application. But as I mentioned, it is much easier, much more flexible, it is faster. After a few minutes, you have your server up and running, and your network is configured for you. In contrast with those two options where you do most of the work yourself, installing it, and etc., there is the solution for a platform as a service, where you not only specify, of course, the CPU and memory requirements, but that after that click, you also get your entire runtime installed. For instance, if entire Jakarta EE runtime is installed, and the only thing that you need to do is configure it and deploy it. If you compare it with the normal, the standard, the classic way of writing Java enterprise applications, that's the same. You install somewhere a Payara server, for instance, as a Jakarta runtime. That is then that needs then configuring. You can immediately deploy your applications. The same for that platform as a service solution, that managed option. Everything is ready for you. It is the machine is ready, the runtime is ready. You only need to configure it, and you need to deploy your application. Sometimes people also see it as the platform as a service solution, where you have that managed runtime, where the runtime is not the actual Java enterprise runtime, but is just a solution like Kubernetes and Docker, which is also managed. So the cloud provider keeps it updated and make sure it runs. But in that case, you are back to doing a lot of those configurations options yourself. Because with Kubernetes and Docker, you still need to configure the routing. You still need to create Kubernetes resources so that you have a pod and a service running so that your application can run. You need to create Docker images, etc. So although it is a bit considered as a platform as a service, because the platform, the Kubernetes platform is there for you installed, you again have to do a lot of work. And this time it is a different type of work which we are used to, because with the on-premise and the infrastructure as a service, we just logged on via remote shell and we knew a few commands because we did it a long time. We can we did it all the time like that. But now Kubernetes is something completely different with other best practices, other ways how you should use it, etc. So instead of using that basic Kubernetes, again, Kubernetes is great, but you need to do a lot of things. And to give you an idea what Payara Cloud can do for you, just as deploy easily on the cloud, I'll give you a short demo. So first of all, you need an account to log in. Log in here, for instance, with my Google account. And I log into the demo environment where I have created a namespace already. A namespace can be used to combine several applications which are related to each other. For instance, it is ideal for a microservice architecture because applications within one namespace can address each other very easily directly without going to the internet for the routing. So I have here a namespace created earlier today. And let's see what the experience is for uploading an application. So I'll choose a WAR file. So I've prepared a simple application with micro profile. I click on upload, and the first thing that he did, and more detail on that later on, the system checks the entire artifact and finds that there are some micro profile config parameters used. If you are using a database, then it detects that also, and then he proposes here the login, the login parameters for your database, like JDBC, URL, username, and password, and things like that. And you can change them. For instance, I'm going to change that email address where he will send probably something to. I can change the route, of course, where it is deploying it, and I can determine the size. For instance, I keep it running on a small size because it is a small artifact that does not need much CPU. Once the entire application is configured, I can click deploy, and the entire machinery of Payara Cloud is put in action, and it does all the steps for you in the background to get your application up and running. By default, he generates here for you a certain hostname that's auto-generated. Within Payara Cloud, we have also foreseen that you can create a custom domain name. I can show that to you in a moment, where you can do that. If I click then here on the link that is generated, you see my application is started, and I have here that changed configuration parameter there, which I changed on screen. So I was able to set some configuration values aside from my deployment, which is typical and best practice, of course, to have those configuration information outside of your application. We can do, as you see, you saw several applications. We can have a look at the log files, for instance, which is of course important now because you don't have direct access anymore to the environment. So you can look at the warnings, which don't work apparently here. Let's look at this one. Here there is more logging information. So I can look at warnings. I see that there are some warnings, these are warnings from expired SSL certificates, which come from my JVM that I'm using. So let's exclude them. So I can do minus SSL. You see, you can do advanced things, and then there are no other warnings. So everything is fine. You saw also that the application was running. I can even export this as JSON so that it can be analyzed outside of the environment. I have other diagnostic tools to check what's going on. I can acquire a thread dump, for instance. I can ask the thread dump, and you see that I have here in my downloads file, I have here a dump file now. Over time, my application has changed, so I can upload a new binary. So let's upload a new version. So I again can choose the v2 version now of my WAR file. I can again create that all the information. I put the same URL, the email here, sorry. I have another value which is not picked up automatically, which can be the case if you retrieve it programmatically. But as you can see, you can also create additional microprofile config values, key value pairs, same demo, for instance. And now it is larger, so I need maybe more CPU, so I can change that and deploy it. And my second version is now active. I can click that deploy, of course, at any time. I can prepare it up front and only a single click. Later on, we are now in the process of creating a CLI so that you, through a command line, or even so automated that so that you do not even to click. But unfortunately, there was a small error detected in this new version. So let's quickly revert to the old version, revert, deploy, and my old version that I deployed initially is again active. And if you see to the configuration, he kept my that configuration that I did initially, and he's running now with that new, with that old version, that old configuration and that old version. One quick thing here on the namespace, as I said, you can here create custom domains. So I can add a custom domain instead of that auto-generated if I add the name and the CNAME, of course, to my system. That is something I have to do myself. So that was a quick demo of what Payara Cloud can do, but the idea is that, again, like let's call it the old good days, that you just have a WAR file, you click deploy, and your application is up and running. But now in the cloud with all the advantages of Kubernetes, of a cloud provider, etc. So here on the right, you see that Payara Cloud box that is still again a black box. It's doing a lot of things for you, which you can tune. As you have seen, you can define something like the CPU usages of your application, but you don't need to care about creating those Kubernetes resources like a pod with YAML files and secrets for those configuration files, and creating a container image based on a Jakarta EE server or Payara Micro, as we are running Payara Cloud, for instance. You don't need to care about that API gateway for Kubernetes. The only thing is click on deploy, configure it, and it runs for you in the cloud. Because, as I said, and I will repeat it because I say both, I say good and bad things about Kubernetes. One of the nicer things is that a simple Kubernetes cluster is not possible, simply because if you're really doing something which is production worthy, which is following some best practices, then again you're confronted with a lot of systems like Helm, Jaeger, Terraform, all the certificate management, because we also automatically request and assign SSL certificates for that host that we have created, etc. So that's one of the things. A simple Kubernetes cluster is not that simple. And that's why we have created Payara Cloud. Actually, it is you only saw the application management. You also have the billing management because it is running on our Azure subscription, which means that we have to pay for some resources. So if you make use of the entire system, then we need to collect some money, and that's why we have that billing management linked to our third-party platform. But of course, as from a developer point of view, there is that application management and that Azure platform. And let's have a look at a few components that we use and some best practices that we have learned, some feedback that we can give anyone who is then using Kubernetes directly, which is in the private cloud or in one of the cloud providers. First of all, we are using the Kubernetes service and a container registry, but we opted, and we don't have a choice really, we opted for a generic image, Payara Micro generic Docker image, because we have no idea what application the user will deploy on our system. So we need to make it as generic as possible so that we can handle any kind of Jakarta EE web profile compliant application. But we think that generic image can be an advantage also for if you are running it in your company, because it is more work, agree, but afterwards it is uniform. Every application is the same. It is easier to maintain. People are faster up to speed with the entire system that you have created, because it is only one generic image that you need to know how to handle and how to use in your environment. The other way, the other part is that you're confronted with the gateways and DNS names and ingress controllers, etc. There we found out that there are various options, various ways how we can do it, even within, for instance, only the Azure platform. There are 3 or 4 different solutions which have all their pro and contra. And we chose a solution, and this time it worked well, but most of the time when I do the demo, when I click on the URL of the application, I get a 502 that the entire gateway and ingress controller is not yet ready, because it takes sometimes up to 15 or 20 seconds before everything is synchronized and updated through the various systems. There are other solutions. One of the 4 others is better in that sense that you have less downtime, so, and they're faster, etc. So one of the things what you should one of the takeaways that you could take from this is that if you not have experienced it yourself already, that setting up those gateways and ingress controls can be sometimes tricky, and that you need to carefully compare what is possible and see how it works. Last thing is that, as you saw, that log analytics, we use the log analytics workspace there simply because it is not an option to store your log files within your pod, within the container itself, because when the container crashes or stops or whatever, then you have lost all the information. So that means that we constantly put all the log files in that log analytic workspace, where we can analyze it, as you saw it with, we can query it, we can export it, we can control it, we keep the logs automatically for 7 days, etc. So that's also a good thing that you need to be aware of, that most people know it, that you should not store log files or keep log files within your container itself. So if you saw me uploading that micro profile application there and put it live. So there are various steps behind. First of all, I did upload the binary, and then, as I mentioned, it scans automatically for config and for database usage. So it scans for JPA persistence, configuration elements, or annotations which are related to a database. Then it captured those configuration values and defined config maps and secrets for it. And then our provisioner controller, which is basically a Kubernetes operator, combines that all that information, the config maps, the uploaded binary, which is stored on a volume, that generic image, what I told you, and then out of all those elements, it creates the required Kubernetes resources so that the pods are launched, services are created. And then we continue. It is here shown as a serial events, but actually we do a lot of things in parallel. We set up DNS names, configure the routing with those ingress controllers. For instance, we request SSL certificates, and we also link that logging, the capturing of the logging in that log analytics workspace of Azure. So all those things we have done, but most of the time I see many companies doing similar things, maybe not scanning for that configuration, but that's something that we have to do because we need to make it generic. But as you see, a lot of companies probably create a platform as a service for their own solution. And so I mentioned already a few things that we have learned. The last two tabs, the last two items are also, of course, important. Good documentation. When we changed from the proof of concept environment to the final environment, although we had good documentation, we thought every script was up to date and ready to use. We still found a few smaller issues that we missed. So again, everyone knows it, but you need to make sure at every step that whatever you do on a certain environment is documented so that later on you can recreate the environment up to the point it was when you were doing your testing. But also do regular tests of the scripts itself, because those platforms evolve. Command lines do change from version some, and that's sometimes it's a good thing that those cloud environments evolve quickly. You have some frameworks even that do updates regular, that post regular updates a week. Sometimes even they do a new release daily. But that also can mean that things can change rapidly and that your scripts, which are a few months old, do not work anymore because a certain parameter has changed. So the idea why we have created Payara Cloud again in this infographic, you don't need to maintain Kubernetes anymore, provision nodes and pods, and don't care about routing or assigning SSL certificates or setup monitoring. That's all automatic handled, so no need for manual doing that. Only thing that you need to do is configure your application and deploy it, as you saw in the demo. So I mentioned a few times, because sometimes when I was preparing this, I was saying too many times Kubernetes is bad. Well, no, Kubernetes is great, but you need to invest some substantial amount of resources in it. People need to learn it, need to know how to work with it, but not only Kubernetes, but also all those other frameworks which are associated with it. So therefore, we believe that Kubernetes is not the ideal solution for all companies, and that most of the companies are more benefited by using a certain tool like Payara Cloud, so that you can go quickly to a cloud environment and have all the advantages of it, but don't need to learn Kubernetes and the entire ecosystem around it. It's not live yet, our environment. We are very close, maybe even a few weeks. So it could take longer. I cannot make any prediction, of course. I don't have a crystal ball. But if you're interested, then go to our website, payarafish.product/Payara Cloud, where you can register your interest. So then you're always updated with the latest info and you get notified when the system is live. So thank you for your attention. I'm not sure if we still have some time for questions or not.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Rudy, for a timely presentation. It's a great input, and I think folks here are appreciating your insights. So if there is any questions to Rudy, please post it now. Otherwise, you can always post your questions, and I'll be more than happy to communicate to Rudy. All right, Kai, thank you so much.
Yeah, Kai is one of the regulars when it is when we talk about Payara. So
interesting. All right, so I guess we'll. All right. Oh, here's a question. So Dennis is asking, is there a path with your product to be multi-cloud? For instance, my water is uploaded to Payara Cloud, but in turn, the application is running deployed simultaneously at AWS, Google, Alibaba, etc.
Not sure if we will have multi-clouds in the near future, but this is a first version which runs on a single provider for the moment Azure, but we are working also on other ones. Not sure if it will ever run in a multi-cloud, meaning that your application is simultaneously running in different cloud providers. That's for the moment not on the horizon, that feature.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. All right, so with that, we're gonna wrap up today's session with Rudy. Thank you, Rudy, so much, and stay tuned for the next session. The next session is going to be talking about how running Jakarta EE applications like Cargo Tracker inside Kubernetes with a nested container architecture by Tatiana Fidoronchik. So stay tuned. We will be starting the session in exactly 2 minutes.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the talks. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Rudy.